Hi, welcome to the Mohua Show. My name is Mohua Chinappa and I am an author, entrepreneur, and ex-housewife. This podcast is about everything from business to technology to arts to lifestyle, but done and spoken ईमानदारी से. Hi, in today's episode, we have Vandana Anchalia. Vandana is the founder and director of COW. COW is Kannan Animal Welfare. Now, when I spoke to Vandana, she mentioned to me that she believes that animals are equally deserving of quality care and respect, and which is so true, considering the number of road accidents we see where, the dog or the cat is just lying totally unattended for days on end. She founded COW with an aim of providing quality care to all strays, defying the subpar standards of animal care in our country. Vandana, to begin with, first and foremost, I would really like you to tell me what is the biggest issues in animal welfare that is happening, presently.
I think if you talk about the biggest issues, I think it's mostly lack of awareness. Lack of awareness that, they deserve the same kind of treatment as we do. And this is a bigger problem in India because, uh, India is already dealing with so many other issues with regards to humans that animal lives does not matter a lot to other people. So there is less of government initiative, there's less of personal initiative. Unless you find a crazy animal lover, you won't see people being kind to animals in general. So I think lack of awareness is the biggest issue right now that animal welfare is facing in our country. Worldwide, developing countries, they have kind of come up with stricter laws and you can see a lot of change happening in the world, but that is not the case with India right now. So, yeah, I would say lack of awareness is the biggest challenge for us.
So tell me, Vandana, what was that point? Were you always an animal lover right from the time you were a child? Because I remember, during our nursery rhymes and books, there was always about a dog talking to a cat and a cat talking to a dog. And we believed that animals did, communicate and respond with each other. And of course, we forgot it over the years. What was that point in your life where you felt that, this was your calling?
So I wouldn't deny that I was an animal lover. I do not know how one defines an animal lover is, but yes, being from a Jain family, we were always taught to be non-violent to animals. We were vegetarians, by the fact that I was from a Marwari family. So we were feeding the dogs outside our house. We were kind to animals around us, basically, never hurt them. But if you speak of this whole craziness about starting a non-profit organization and pursuing this as my passion was not something that I had identified at that point in time. It only happened very recently. That was in 2014 when I saw one of my neighbors like beating a dog to almost death,
Oh
and
God.
it kind of uh, it just kind of disturbed me to a point that being silent about something is fine. You don't want to pursue an issue is fine. But if your silence results in somebody's death, that's just not acceptable. And it's that was the point when it all started. And I did not know at that point in 2014 that this was going to take a turn in such a serious way wherein in like in next 2 years I will have. Yeah, I'm saying that once you start rescuing, it's almost like you start seeing animals in distress. It just happens to you naturally. And I think it started with one, but then I went on to personally rescue a lot of animals near my house. And then at some point I realized that this is not enough because you're always seeing suffering, and then the whole idea of this creating an organization came. So that is how cow came into being. uh, but yes, I was an animal lover. I always loved animals from the time I was a child. I was a kid, I mean.
So, it's really interesting when you say this because, I keep thinking about the fact that yes, I can't handle suffering of any sort. If there's a cow who's suffering or a dog suffering or a human being suffering, any suffering whatsoever does disturb me. But somewhere I don't know if I can really say that I'm out of this whole nexus because I do carry leather, I do carry bags, and there is I do carry a lot of products. I wear a lot of stuff, on me, which definitely has caused some animal somewhere that's been treated very badly. And so it's such a ecosystem that we live in. How do you think, as someone who's been advocating towards and working towards such a big cause, and we also know that you've had a crowdfunding, and which is amazing for the kind of work you do, because very few people can do that. And how do you think that one can address this as an issue?
So, Mahua, what you're saying is actually a real issue. We do live in an ecosystem wherein, everything that we do ends up in cruelty to animals. And even as an animal lover, rescuer, I'll tell you, you don't consciously think about how you are adding to the cruelty. Till last year, till I did my Mrs. India, I was using products which were being tested on animals. Because, even when you start as a rescuer, you're rescuing lives and you think you're doing a lot. You don't consciously think beyond that because, we are not conditioned like that. We do not grow up thinking that, okay, if I, okay, animals are being tested for us to use a product, or, there's leather. I was using leather. I never actually gave it a thought. But when I participated in Mrs. India, because my sole purpose of participating was obviously to bring awareness to this issue and just not women and child and old age and general topic that people talk about, because I know this cause is very least spoken about. That's when I realized that even I am not, you know, in a sense, a true animal lover because I'm still kind of contributing to the cruelty. Have I eliminated everything in my life that is leading to cruelty? Maybe not. Because as you said, our ecosystem is such that, even the products that we use at home, even the cleaning products, even small things that we do at home, they, or milk for that matter, veganism as a concept for that matter. I'm not a vegan yet. So there are a lot of factors, but if this consciousness has come to me after 4 or 5 years of doing this, imagine for a normal person who goes on about his life or her life, not a huge animal lover. Just imagine how they would even go to that extent and think. But at some point, I think because we are becoming environmentally conscious,
We
these
have
things
no
will come into
choice,
play.
Vandana. There, we have no choice. We have to become conscious.
That's
The
what I'm
world is
saying.
suffering in such a huge way कि हमारे पास तो कोई choice ही नहीं है. We don't have a choice. Yeah.
राइट सो अब वही मैं आपको बता रही हूँ कि इट्स नो लॉन्गर अ केस ऑफ एनिमल क्रूएलिटी इट्स बिकमिंग एनवायरमेंटली अनसस्टेनेबल ऑल्सो द यूज
Yeah,
ऑफ
but when we
लेदर द
talk,
यूज ऑफ
about
एनिमल
animals,
प्रोडक्ट्स
yeah. So, Vandana, when we talk about animals, I'm very interested, also because, in India, mosquitoes, we have 7 lakh plus deaths with dengue and malaria, and they also
राइट
fall under that category. Yeah, and we have dogs that cause about 35,000 plus deaths on roads, and these are human beings also who die because of a cow that's just been left out on the street, and, somebody at night is driving. There is dengue, there is malaria, there are these mosquitoes that are killing, human beings. And I'm just very curious because to understand, because is it big, dogs, they're so beautiful because we have so much of social media around us where you have these really cute videos of kittens and dogs and a rabbit, and some people also actually have snakes as pets. And we tend to feel, because we are a society who's all the time we're scrolling down our phones, and we find these really pretty videos, and people are more maybe becoming softer towards dogs, but the rest of the animals really are not taken into consideration, even by the greatest probably animal organizations that work towards animal welfare. So do you kind of how do you how do you address this?
so what you're saying is very true. Dogs are the easiest to rescue, easiest to communicate with, and they are because they are more their relationship with humans is very different from any other animal. Not that other animals are not affectionate. I mean, I had a huge misconception about cats till I had two of my own. Only when you have them, you understand their way of being affectionate is completely different from how a dog interacts with you. But yeah, there is a bias, obviously, but it's not that there are not people doing particular kind of rescues, but it is really the lack of awareness, infrastructure, resources in India that leads to this bias. Because if you go abroad, you will see rescues for all kind of animals. Farm animals have their own rescues, cats have their own rescues, dogs have
Yeah,
their own
Vandana, human
rescues.
beings here don't have rescue. So, India is not even a country that we can really compare, with the
That's what I'm
international
saying. It's
standards.
that's a
Yeah.
problem.
Mm.
That's the problem that India is dealing with. Its own issues of human population, humans dying, with this pandemic, and everything is so we are always around humans that we are not even able to solve that. So I'll just give you a very small example. If a crime happens with an animal, you go to the police station, you try to lodge an FIR, they are so overwhelmed with their own human cases that they don't want to take it up, and they ask us for the logic कि हम इंसानों का नहीं कर पा रहे हैं और आप कुत्ते का केस लेके आ गए हो. You understand? So there is a disbalance there, but at some point, we have to understand that it has to go hand in hand, because nobody is above someone else. Even animals are living beings, nobody is above them. So there is bias, but we as a country have a long way to go when it comes to animal rights and welfare.
Yeah, I think this is a very, very, it's a long drawn conversation because, like I said, that for most of us, we find these very cute videos of dogs and cats and animals that can be kept at home with the human being. And they are maybe, they are on the better part of the food chain, unlike a whole lot of other animals that have the equal amount of probably affection, which is not yet known. And yeah, so it's like for because I was just talking to someone and they said the number of deaths that happen on roads. There are stray dogs that are outside. They often bark, and they catch people who are coming back late at night, who are riding a bike, and they end up getting bitten by the dogs. And these are all very poor people, who are probably doing a late night shift, from a restaurant or from a hospital. And so these are serious issues that happen in India. So obviously, animal love is going to be so much in question because there's so many other things that are so large, Vandana. But
So when you talk about, sorry to interrupt you there, when you
yes,
talk about deaths because of dog, I'll tell you there is in multiples of hundred, the dogs are dying every day because of human cruelty, dogs being run over,
yes.
dogs not having shelter, dogs not having food. And what you're talking about is just a very small portion of, as I said, we have to come a long way when it comes to animal rights. The dog population certainly needs to go down. It is unsustainable to have millions of dogs on the street. You
Hmm.
have to start a spay
A
and neuter
sterilization
program to
process.
correct,
Yeah.
to control the population. But as I said, this is not government's priority right now, and there is so much corruption, in our country. Even if somebody gets a ABC contract, there's so much corruption within the government who's giving you the contract that it is impossible to reach the target that you want to. At the pace India is doing sterilization, we will never solve this problem, because by the time you complete 20,000, there are 1 lakh which are reproduced already, because a dog is capable of producing
Yeah,
a
yeah, they
litter of
have a
6 to
litter.
8.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So this is unsustainable because of that. So no, even as an animal lover, I understand that feeding the dog or just looking after the dog is not going to solve the problem. The problem will only get solved when we start sterilizing, and the population goes down and there is no homeless dogs on the street. Even dogs on the street is not a good thing. It's not good for the dogs, it's not good for the humans, because they are territorial by nature. And if they see somebody, coming into their territory, they will chase. It's a natural behavior.
So tell me, you have sent dogs from India abroad. There have been families who've taken dogs. Yeah. There has been a rule with the government, if I'm not mistaken, because, in India, we still have rabies, unlike the countries abroad, because, dogs outside, I don't think they have rabies. Am I right?
No, so it depends country to country. We majorly send our dogs to Canada and US.
Okay.
Countries like Australia and Europe, for that matter, has stricter rules for import or export of dogs, just for the
Yes.
simple fact that India has rabies.
Yes.
Recently, US has also put a ban on India
Yes. Yes.
to
I had
send
read
any
about
sort
that.
of dogs
Yeah.
who are adoptable. just for the simple reason the strain of rabies that was not in US has been identified from the dogs that have been coming from abroad, but not necessarily from India. They were taking a lot of dogs from China, Korea, the dogs who've been saved from, meat trade and all of that. So we don't exactly know from where the strain of rabies came, but still, it was a blanket ban on all the 131 countries that fall into that category. So India, unfortunately, is a tier 3 country, which still has very active cases of rabies. US is a tier 2 country, and then countries like Australia, they are tier 1 countries where there is no rabies at all. So
Has
we
this
still fall
affected you,
into.
Vandana, in,
Yeah, 100%, because all our adoptions were overseas only. We barely had any local adoptions, just because of the simple fact that the kind of dogs that we were rescuing were very, very critical cases. And uh, these dogs were not adoptable in India just because some were disfigured, or some were missing a leg or an eye. People don't even want to adopt a normal Indian dog with everything okay and healthy. So forget about a dog which has some sort of problem. But these stories were reaching, I think emotionally they were connecting to a lot of people overseas, and they still came forward. And I think people overseas, because as I said, it's more of education, awareness, that they're open to adopting animals like this. In India, we still have कि लोग क्या बोलेंगे, मैं एक पैर मिसिंग वाला कुत्ता लेके घूम रहा हूँ. So we still have that reputation issue, that we don't want to adopt Indian dogs.
Fantastic. So, Vandana, thank you so much for being in today's podcast. And, before I end, I have to tell my listeners that Vandana contested for the title of Mrs. India 2021 in January last year. She further went ahead and won the coveted subtitle Mrs. Beyond People's Choice at the Mrs. India pageant. I have to tell you about one of my most favorite novel by George Orwell, Animal Farm, which is still taught to school children and remains for many the entry point into the political thought processes that shape the planet. It took some talking pigs and horses to achieve that. So thank you so much, Vandana, for all the good work that you're doing. And I hope many more people come forward, listen to this podcast, help you out, reach out to you. And thank you so much for being on today's show.
Thank you, Mohua.
To you, our dearest listeners, you can find us on your favorite streaming services, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, and of course on all other major streaming services. With loads of love, we are The Mohua Show, where we talk ईमानदारी से.